Deep in the dense forested highways of Jharkhand, there is a local legend that defies physical geography. It's called the Chakwa. According to folklore, it's a terrifying entity that isolates travelers on the road and traps them in a seamless, inescapable spatial loop. Mahindra was exactly the kind of person who would ignore a story like that. He was a 40-year-old veteran truck driver. He spent decades hauling heavy freight across Kolkata and Rajasthan, relying entirely on strict routine, diesel engines, and the mechanical reality of the road. But on this specific night, his logistics company handed him a completely unfamiliar route. He had to haul a shipment of animal meat straight from the bustling city of Jamshedpur out into the isolated stretches leading to Ranchi. He was navigating National Highway 43 in the dead of night when the weather turned against him. Torrential rain began pounding the windshield, and a thick, freezing fog rolled across the asphalt, dropping his visibility to near zero. As he crept forward with his hazard lights flashing, a creeping sense of dread set in. He had been driving for miles, yet the road was completely empty. No oncoming headlights, no cars in the rearview mirror, no pedestrians, just endless, suffocating gray. Before any supernatural entity even made contact, his environment had already compromised him. The combination of an unknown route, total sensory deprivation, and absolute isolation stripped away his standard geographic anchors. He was driving entirely blind inside a psychological vacuum. Then the physical world violently intersected with the unknown. Without warning, the silhouette of a young girl appeared dead center in his headlights. Mahindra slammed the brakes, but the heavy truck struck her with a sickening thud. He forced himself out of the cab and stepped into the freezing fog to investigate the impact. Under the truck's headlights, Mahindra saw something that should have been in the ground, a skeletal frame barely clinging to patches of rotting flesh, standing unnaturally still in the cold rain. Absolute panic hijacked his nervous system. Realizing this nightmare was standing right in front of him, Mahindra sprinted back to the safety of his cab, slamming and locking the heavy metal door behind him. The collision served as a physical key turning a lock. By hitting the figure, Mahindra had inadvertently confirmed his place inside the Chakwa's distorted loop, sealing the exit behind him. He cranked the ignition, dropped the gear, and floored the accelerator. The heavy diesel engine roared, and the fuel gauge steadily dropped. But looking out the side window, he realized the truck was completely stationary. He was burning fuel, yet making zero forward progress. Then he checked his rearview mirror. The same skeletal figure was standing directly behind the trailer. No matter how aggressively he revved the engine to pull away, the distance between the bumper and the entity never changed by a single inch. Desperate to figure out why the wheels wouldn't catch, he opened the door and stepped out a second time. But the cold asphalt was completely gone. He was standing in a dense, overgrown jungle, surrounded by thick foliage and suffocating fog. From deep within the trees, he started hearing voices, disembodied whispers calling out his exact name, trying to coax him away from the safety of the heavy machinery and deeper into the brush. Take a look at this top-down diagram plotting a vehicle's path. It shows exactly how the Chakwa functions. It operates by hijacking a driver's spatial orientation, taking a straight, linear trajectory, and warping it into a closed, repeating circle. The victim is forced to drive endlessly along the exact same track. The trap acts like a machine fueled by human terror. The faster a victim tries to run, and the more panic they output, the tighter the spatial loop becomes. The Chakwa relies on a corrupted, rule-based system. It's a localized collapse of physical direction, a closed-loop puzzle punishing the human instinct to flee forward. Watching his fuel needle drop while his surroundings remained frozen, Mahindra remembered an old warning from a fellow driver about the Chakwa. He realized that as long as he tried to push forward, he was feeding the loop exactly what it wanted. If the windshield showed a path that consumed his fuel without granting him distance, then the path ahead was a hallucination. He turned his back on the horizon and shifted the massive truck into reverse. By navigating backward and relying strictly on the reflection in his rearview mirror, he was attempting to travel away from the entity's control. He was betting his life that the mirror held the only anchor to the road he had actually traveled. This mechanical inversion of his trajectory worked. By rejecting the visual input of the windshield, he broke the spatial spell. Slowly, the thick jungle dissolved, and the cold asphalt of the highway reappeared under his tires. He had backed his way out of the anomaly. Moments later, he spotted a second transport truck parked on the shoulder. The driver was wandering in the fog, searching for a girl he had just hit, trapped in the exact same opening sequence of the loop. Mahindra warned him, but escaping required one final procedural step. According to local lore, the entity demanded a physical toll. Remembering his cargo, Mahindra pulled chunks of raw animal meat from his trailer and left them on the roadside as an appeasement offering. They survived because Mahindra didn't rely on adrenaline. Survival in this environment requires the complete abandonment of the biological instinct to flee and the execution of a cold, mechanical reversal of the situation. Both drivers pushed forward through the fog until they finally reached a glowing roadside temple dedicated to Hanuman and Van Devi. It was an absolute physical boundary of safety. A local priest at the temple confirmed what they had just survived. He explained that a girl had died on that specific stretch of road years ago, and the area remained cursed. The temple was built exactly at the edge of her territory, a permanent threshold the Chakwa cannot cross. But the true terror of National Highway 43 is what happens inside the mind of the driver. In a moment of completely incomprehensible terror, succumbing to panic is a guaranteed death sentence. The Chakwa functions like a psychological parasite, thriving on a victim's spiraling panic and the abandonment of reason. It needs your despair to keep the loop turning. When you are isolated in the dark and outside help is miles away, your grounded, analytical mind becomes your ultimate survival tool. When the physical rules of the world break down around you, the only way to survive the impossible is to trust your own intellect to reverse engineer and escape.